Hello again, and welcome to week 12, day 3. We continue with the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, verse 1 through 16. Last time, we saw the Pharisees start to criticize Jesus and his disciples because they weren't fasting. This week, they're going to get even more angry at him when he doesn't act the way they think he should act on the Sabbath day. So let's see what happens. One Sabbath, while Jesus was going through the grain fields, his disciples plucked some heads of grain, rubbed them in their hands, and ate them. But some of the Pharisees said, "Why are you doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and took and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for any but the priests to eat, and he gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, 'The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.'" On another Sabbath he entered the synagogue and taught, and there was a man there whose right hand was withered. The scribes and the Pharisees watched him to see whether he would cure on the Sabbath, so that they might find an accusation against him. Even though he knew what they were thinking, he said to the man who had the withered hand, "Come and stand here." He got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, "I ask you, is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save life or to destroy it?" After looking around at all of them, he said to him, "Stretch out your hand." He did so, and his hand was restored. But they were filled with fury and discussed with one another what they might do to Jesus. Now during those days he went out to the mountain to pray, and he spent the night in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples and chose 12 of them, whom he also named apostles: Simon, whom he named Peter, and his brother Andrew, and James and John, and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew, and Thomas, and James son of Alphaeus, and Simon who was called the Zealot, and Judas son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. Now, I think this is the perfect reading to wrap up this week, because we saw Moses on day 1 go into exile. We saw St. John Chrysostom on day 2 talking about suffering and how important it is that we trust God and draw close to him and not expect that our life is going to be all peachy keen and easy. Now we see sort of the flip side. How does God care for us? A lot of times we tend to think that God has it in for us, that he's just looking for opportunities to catch us doing something wrong and to bring down the hammer and punish us, and that he expects us to live live up to impossible standards, not to eat, not to drink, not to be healed, to be sick all the time. And again, the reality is sometimes as Christians, as human beings, we will be hungry, we will be thirsty, we will be sick. But the point of those things is to learn to trust God. And here we see, what does God do when he comes to us? And what we see is he feeds his disciples and he defends them even when they're eating on the Sabbath day, even when they're technically breaking not his rules, but the way that people interpreted his rules, the way people interpreted his law, saying you're not allowed to do any sort of work on the Sabbath day. He said, but you still have to eat. You have to care for the body. You have to eat. And then he healed the withered hand of the man to show that, again, God isn't a legalist. He's not sitting there just waiting for us to break a bunch of arbitrary rules. He wants what is good for us. And what is good for us is to be with him. And when we are with him, he feeds us. He heals us. He raises us up. He cares for us in every way. So that even if we suffer deprivations, even if we experience suffering, when we trust God, when we remain with him, we know that he will care for us. And if we ever find ourselves in a situation where we think, God hates me, God just got it in for me, God, he has all these unreasonable rules and it's impossible to live, we can be certain somewhere we are misunderstanding the gospel, we are misunderstanding the Christian faith. If all we think about it is that God has it in for us, or is arbitrary and full of rules that make no sense and have no connection to reality. That's wrong. God loves us. He wants us to be well. But the only way for us to be well is to be with Him. And that's enough of a task for a lifetime, and indeed it's enough of a task for an eternity. So, God bless you all. See you next week.